It is, without question, the most horrifying execution ever described. The ribs, hacked from the spine one by one, the lungs, torn out through the back and spread across the shoulders, like a great pair of bloody wings. They called it the blood eagle. For 1,000 years it's been the ultimate symbol of Viking savagery, cold, ritual, and merciless. There's just one problem. It might never have happened at all. To tell this story, we have to start with a man who may be just as invented as the execution itself, Ragnar Lothbrok. In the sagas, Ragnar is the greatest Viking who ever lived. A raider who terrorized France, sacked cities, and sailed home rich every single time. The trouble is, historians can't actually prove he existed. He looks less like one man, and more like several real Vikings, stitched together into one giant legend. But every legend needs a villain, and Ragnar's was King Aella of Northumbria, right here in England. The story goes that Ragnar's luck finally ran out. He was captured by Aella's men, and thrown into a pit, crawling with snakes. And Ragnar, being Ragnar, is said to have laughed as he died. With a warning. His sons would come, and they would not be kind. His sons were very real, and very dangerous. Among them, a warlord the sagas call Ivar the Boneless. In the year 865, they raised the biggest Viking force England had ever seen, the Great Heathen Army, and crossed the sea for revenge. They stormed through the country and captured the great city of York, and they caught the one man they had come for, King Aella. What happens next is where legend takes over. The sagas say Ivar stepped forward to pay his father's debt. Brace yourself, because the description is grim. The victim was laid face down. The ribs were cut from the spine and bent outward like wings, and the lungs were pulled through the opening. And in some tellings, salt was rubbed into the wound, just to be thorough. It's monstrous, it's theatrical, it's the perfect Viking nightmare. And that is exactly the problem. Because when historians go looking for hard proof, they find almost nothing. No body has ever been found with the marks of a blood eagle. No grave, no skeleton, no eyewitness ever described one. Nobody who claimed to see it wrote it down at the time. Every single account comes from Norse sagas and poems, and almost all of them were written down 2, 3, even 400 years after the Vikings were gone. Worse still, many were written by Christian scribes, who saw the old pagan Vikings as monsters, and had every reason to make them sound as savage as possible. And the sagas weren't history books, they were entertainment, stories told and retold to thrill a crowd around a fire. And a good story only ever grows in the telling, which brings us to the strangest theory of all. Some scholars think the entire blood eagle rests on a misunderstanding of a single line of poetry. There's one early verse that mentions Ivar, King Aella, and an eagle carving his back. But in Viking poetry, the eagle wasn't a torture. It was a stock image, the carrion birds that gathered to feed after a battle. To a Norse poet, saying the eagle clawed a man's back simply meant one thing. He was killed, and left for the birds. One line. Two wildly different meanings. A dead enemy on a battlefield, or an elaborate ritual execution. Now play a few centuries of retelling on top of that, and a simple, grim battlefield image could slowly harden into a step-by-step ritual. A poem became a procedure. The horror grew with every generation that repeated it. So in 2022, a team of doctors and a historian tried something new. They didn't ask, did it happen? They asked, could it even be done? Using anatomy models, they carefully worked through the whole grisly procedure. They figured you'd need hooked spears to prise the ribs apart. Brutal, but doable. Their verdict? Technically, yes. It was physically possible. But barely. The victim would have died almost instantly, from blood loss or a collapsed chest, long before those wings could ever be made. Which means if anyone ever really did this, most of it was performed on a body that was already dead. Less an execution, more a piece of gruesome theater for a watching crowd. And in our own time, the blood eagle got a brand new life, in TV shows and video games, shown in loving, horrible detail. Suddenly, a shaky old legend felt like rock-solid history. Millions of people now know the Vikings did this, on the strength of a single, murky poem. So what's the truth? A real ritual, a poem that got out of hand, or a little of both, exaggerated with every retelling? The honest answer, and you rarely hear this online, is that nobody knows. And a good history story is allowed to end with a shrug. But here's the thing. The Vikings were so feared that people kept inventing fresh horrors about them for centuries after the last longboat sailed. Real or not, The Blood Eagle tells you exactly how terrifying their reputation was. And that might be the most Viking thing of all. If that gave you a shiver, hit subscribe, because we are nowhere near done with the Vikings. There are so many more weird, gruesome and downright unbelievable Viking stories still to dig up. Next time on the Grubby Past, the Vikings who filed sinister grooves into their own front teeth. And to this day, nobody is completely sure why. It only gets stranger from here.